The vastness of space near the star Epsilon Endi was no longer empty. It was filled with light, fire, and broken metal. The Keithal hegemony fleet moved like a single terrible creature. Their ships were smooth and silver, shaped like curved blades. They moved in perfect, silent patterns. For them, war was not messy. It was a ceremony, a final step. For 3 standard cycles, they had studied humanity. They watched the United Terran colonies fight, build, and plan. The Keithal saw human bravery. They saw human cleverness. They noted the peak of human warship design, their energy weapons, their shield technology. And they decided the time for the great culling had come. A final battle was not a surprise. The Keithal believed in a fair fight by their own rules. They sent a formal declaration. They named the place. They arrived with exactly the force needed to win. No more, no less. It was how they proved their mastery. The human fleet met them with everything they had. Ships called Vanguard and Sentinel and Guardian. The flagship was the mighty UTC Valiant. For 12 hours, the humans fought with a courage that even Archon Kavar, the hegemony commander, noted as impressive. Their pilots made daring moves. Their weapons scored hits on Keithal hulls. Their commander on the Valiant made smart, quick choices. But it was like a skilled child fighting a master swordsman. The Keithal had done this for centuries with other species. They knew every move the humans would make before they made it. They had already calculated the limits of human technology, the strain on their reactors, the recharge rate of their shields. One by one, the human ships died. A cruiser called Gallant took 3 precise hits to its engine core and vanished in a silent blue flash. A carrier named Providence had its flight decks cracked open, spilling tiny fighter craft like seeds into the dark. The last to fall was the Valiant. It was surrounded. Its shields glowed a desperate orange under the pounding. Archon Kavar watched from the command sphere of his flagship, the unblinking eye. His body was tall and slender, his skin a pale gray. He felt no hate, no anger. Only the calm satisfaction of a task done correctly. "Finish the ritual," Kavar said, his voice a soft chime. A final volley of glowing green plasma lanced out from the hegemony fleet. It struck the Valiant in several places at once. The ship's stern tore apart. Its middle section bent. For a moment, it was a broken toy against the stars. Then its reactor gave up, and the Valiant became a brief. New sun-dot silence returned to the space around Epsilon Endi, the silence of victory. On the bridge of the unblinking eye, the mood was quiet and professional. Tactical displays showed no remaining human energy signatures, only drifting wreckage and the cold, expanding clouds of debris. "The human question is settled," Archon Kavar announced to his fleet. The message was sent across the light years, back to the hegemony core worlds. It was a simple statement of fact. Their Marshall Peak has been measured and found insufficient. The path to their core worlds is clear. Prepare for the next phase. The next phase was absorption. The hegemony would move into human space. They would take the useful resources. They would study the interesting parts of human culture. The survivors would be folded into the hegemony, a new lower class. It was the way of things. It was orderly. Archon Kavar felt a flicker of something almost like respect for the humans. They had fought well within their limits. But limits were everything. The hegemony's mastery was in knowing the limits of their enemies, then showing them those limits right before the end. "Begin recovery operations," Kavar ordered. "Scan the debris field for any salvageable technology or data cores. Cleanse the area." The hegemony ships, graceful and unhurried, began to move through the graveyard they had created. Tractor beams pulled large pieces of hull metal. Scanners probed broken ship computers for information. It was methodical work. Deep in the shadow of the system's gas giant, a world of swirling orange and red clouds, something else was present. It had watched the battle. Its sensors, older and of a different kind than the hegemonies, had tracked every flash, every explosion dot. It was a shape. A massive, dark shape, drifting slowly in a lazy orbit around the gas giant. To a quick scan, it registered as almost nothing. A large, cold asteroid. Its surface was irregular and rocky. It had no energy output, no heat signature. It was just another piece of the system's natural clutter, a silent witness to the death of a fleet. On the bridge of the hegemony scout ship Silent Talon, a junior sensor operator noted the object. It was big, maybe 5 kilometers long, but its composition was odd. Very dense, layered. He flagged it automatically. "Archon," the scout commander reported. "We have a minor anomaly near the 7th planet. A large dormant mass. Composition is atypical for this region. Possibly a mineral-rich asteroid, or a derelict." Kovar considered this. A derelict human ship? Perhaps a supply vessel that had hidden. It was of no consequence. The battle was over. The doctrine was satisfied. But to leave a task unfinished was against their nature. "Investigate," Kevar chimed. "A hunter-killer pack. If it is a derelict, board it and secure any data. If it is natural, ignore it. Do not waste resources." 3 hegemony ships, smaller and faster than the battle cruisers, peeled away from the main fleet. They were like silver daggers. They moved toward the gas giant and the dark, silent shape sleeping in its shadow. This was not part of the great culling. This was just cleaning up. A final, minor detail after the main event. They had no way of knowing they were not the hunters anymore. They were the curious mice approaching the sleeping bear dot inside the dark shape, in a buried command room that had known only silence for decades. A single light on a dust-covered panel turned from red to amber. A sensor had been pinged by an active scan. Deep in the ship's heart, a bank of reactors, cold for a generation, received a trickle of power. Miles of dormant wiring began to hum with a tiny, waking current. The watch was over. But the waking would take time. The 3 hegemony ships moved through the silent dark. Their names were Swift Verdict, Efficient Truth, and Clarifying Blade. They were perfect examples of K-Thel design. Sleek, fast, and armed with precise plasma lances. Their commander, a sub-archon named Varel, felt no excitement. This was a simple duty. A final sweep after the real work was done. The target on their screens grew larger. It was a jagged, uneven shape tumbling slowly near the orange giant planet. Its surface was a patchwork of dark rock and shadow. It looked completely dead. No engine glow, no reactor heat, no electronic whispers. "Scan it again," Varel ordered, "full spectrum." The sensor officer on the Swift Verdict complied. The results were confusing. The outer layer is consistent with carbonaceous rock and space dust, sub-archon. It appears to be several meters thick, but beneath it, the density readings are extreme. There are regular patterns. Geometric lines under all that rock. Varel considered this. A ship, then. An old one, covered in centuries of cosmic debris. A generation ship, perhaps, or a forgotten colony vessel. Something from humanity's early days among the stars. A museum piece. "Attempt to hail," Varel said. "Standard peace frequencies." Then challenge frequencies. There was no answer. Only the empty hiss of background radiation. The silence felt deeper here, away from the debris field. Life signs? None detected. The object is as cold as the space around it. Varel made his decision. Move to intercept. Prepare a boarding team on Clarifying Blade. We will claim this relic for the hegemony archives. The 3 ships took up positions around the dark mass. Their lights swept across its surface, catching on sharp, rocky edges. It was ugly. A clumsy thing compared to their graceful forms dot deep inside the rock. In a chamber that had been dark for 53 years, a second light turned amber. Then a third. A circuit closed. A trickle of power became a stream dot in the main command center. A room buried under layers of armored hull and false rock. The air was still and cold. Captain Li Jun sat in his command chair. He had been sitting there for 3 hours, ever since the first passive alert had chimed. He did not move. He barely seemed to breathe. His eyes were fixed on a tactical screen that showed 3 small, bright contacts surrounding a large, dark blob that represented his ship dot around him. The bridge crew of the Guriambi was coming to life. Commander Park Soo-min stood at his right shoulder, her face calm but her eyes sharp, taking in every readout. She had been reading a book on ancient Earth history when the alert came. The book was now tucked neatly under her console dot at the helm station. Choi Ji-woo stretched her fingers slowly. Her screen showed the positions of the alien ships. She calculated their vectors, their likely firing arcs, all without being told dot at weapons. Kim Tae-shik had a slight, tense smile on his face. His boards were still dark, but his hands were poised above them, ready. He had waited his entire career for this moment. Chief Engineer Kwon Min-seok's voice crackled softly over the internal comms. Captain, the heart is stirring. We are at 5% reactor capacity and climbing. Systems are coming online layer by layer. No faults. She slept well. Li Jun gave a single slow nod. His voice, when he finally spoke, was a low rumble, like stone moving. Do not rush her. Bring the defenses online first. Silent and gentle. Aye, Captain, Kwon replied. The Guriambi was not like other human ships. It was not built for speed or beauty. It was built in a time of great fear, when the colonies believed a different kind of enemy might come, an enemy that could not be reasoned with. Its design philosophy was simple: survive and hit back harder. Its outer layer was not armor plating. It was a shell of real rock and composite material, making it look like an asteroid to any quick scan. Under that was a layer of heat-absorbing foam and cold gel to hide its engine signature. Under that was the first real layer of armor, a mesh of graphene and ceramic. The ship was a fortress disguised as a stone. On the swift verdict, the sensor officer frowned. Sabarkhan, I am detecting a minute power fluctuation from within the object. It is faint. It could be residual battery decay. Varel felt a flicker of professional interest. Or a wake-up cycle. Target the location of the fluctuation. A single low-power plasma burst. Encourage anything inside to announce itself. The swift verdict's main weapon glowed a soft green. It fired. A bolt of superheated energy crossed the space and struck the rocky surface of the derelict. Rock vaporized instantly in a silent flash. A small crater, 10 meters wide, was blown into the surface. Dust and debris fanned out in a slow-motion cloud. On the bridge of the Guriambi, the lights dimmed for a fraction of a second as power was diverted. Direct hit on Section 7 Beta, Park Soo-min reported, her voice cool. The outer shell absorbed 90%. No damage to the ablative layer beneath. They are curious. Li Jun watched the alien ship on the screen. It was repositioning, looking for a better angle. They have had their warning, he said. Wake the rest of her up, Chief, but keep the music low. Aye, bringing the heart to 20%. Deep in the engineering section, a reactor that had been silent for decades began to spin faster. It did not roar. It produced a deep subsonic vibration that thrummed through the entire ship's frame. The crew felt it in their bones, a steady, powerful beat. On the hegemony ships, the sensor displays went wild. Massive energy spike. The officer cried. from the core of the object. It is. It is a reactor signature. Older fission-fusion hybrid, but enormous output. The rocky surface of the asteroid began to crack. Large chunks, held in place by weak magnetic fields and old glue, broke away and drifted off. Underneath, the surface was smooth, dark, and hard. It was a charcoal-colored metal, etched with deep, angular lines. More plates fell away along the sides of the ship, revealing rows of circular ports covered by heavy shutters. Along the spine of the beast, running lights sparked to life, not the bright blue of human ships, but a dim, warning red. The Guriambi was shedding its skin. It was becoming what it truly was. Virel felt the first cold touch of something he had never felt before. Tactical shock. This was not a derelict. It was a warship. A massive, primitive, terrifying warship. All ships, he chimed, his voice sharp. Battle alert. Target that vessel's exposed areas. Full power to weapons. The 3 hegemony ships moved with practiced speed, their plasma weapons charging with a high-pitched whine. Inside the Guriambi, Li Jun finally stood up. He placed a hand on the back of his chair. He looked at the tactical display, now showing the 3 glowing hostile icons. Helm, give us a slow roll to bring broadside 1 to bear, he said. Weapons, target the lead ship. Load kinetic battery 1. Let's introduce ourselves. Aye, Captain, Choi Ji-woo said, her hands moving smoothly. The massive ship began to turn, not quickly, but with undeniable, heavy purpose. Kim Tae-shik's board was now a constellation of green lights. Kinetic battery 1 loaded. Single rod, tungsten core, magnetic coils charged. The Guriambi completed its turn. On its side, a large shutter irised open, revealing a dark, circular mouth. Inside, a metal projectile the size of a school bus sat encased in a magnetic coil. Fire, said Li Jun. There was no bright beam of light. There was only a deep thump that vibrated through the ship. From the open port, a blur shot out, moving at a terrifying speed. It was so fast, it was almost invisible. On the swift verdict, Virel had just enough time to see a flash on his sensor screen. A solid object moving at a significant fraction of light speed. There was no time to evade. No time to raise shields. The tungsten rod struck the swift verdict amidships. It did not explode. It simply passed straight through the elegant silver ship, tearing through every deck, every bulkhead, and erupting out the other side in a shower of molten metal. The force of the impact was so great it shattered the ship's spine. The swift verdict folded in the middle, its pieces flying apart in a cloud of silent, glittering ruin. 1 shot. 1 kill. The silence on the hegemony channels was absolute. The efficient truth and clarifying blade hung in space, their weapons still charged, their crews frozen. On the bridge of the Guriambi, Kim Tae-shik looked up. Target destroyed, Captain. Li Jun watched the expanding debris. Hail the remaining vessels, he said to Commander Park. Send it on all frequencies. Park Soo-min opened a channel. Her voice was clear and calm. Unidentified vessels. You have fired upon a United Terran Colonies battleship. You are in restricted space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. This is your only warning. The message, in simple galactic trade dialect, echoed across the void. Archon Kaivar, still with the main fleet at the debris field, received the frantic, shocked report from the efficient truth at the same moment he heard the human message. His satisfaction vanished, replaced by a cold, unfamiliar sensation. It was the feeling of a master chess player who has just seen his opponent place a piece on the board that does not belong to the game he knows. The silence on the bridge of the Guriambi was heavy, but not empty. It was filled with the low, steady thrum of the awakened reactor, the ship's heartbeat. On the view screen, the broken pieces of the swift verdict drifted slowly, catching the distant light of the star. The two remaining hegemony ships, the Efficient Truth and Clarifying Blade, had stopped moving. They hung in space like startled insects. Captain Lee Jun watched them. His face showed no pride, no anger. He looked like a man who had just finished a small, necessary chore. "Keep them targeted," he said, his voice still that quiet rumble. "If they charge weapons or move to attack, disable them. Aim for engines." "Aye, Captain," Kim Tae-shik said from his weapons station. His fingers danced over the controls, shifting targeting solutions. The Gurianbi had other weapons now coming online. Smaller point defense coil guns, missile pods. All of them were different from the energy-based weapons the hegemony understood. On the Efficient Truth, Sub-Archon Veyrel was trying to process what had happened. His mind, trained for ritual and predictable warfare, struggled. The enemy ship had not used plasma or lasers. It had thrown a giant piece of metal. It was barbaric. It was also terrifyingly effective. His own ship's shields were designed to deflect energy, to dissipate heat. They offered almost no protection against a solid object moving that fast. The physics were brutally simple. He saw the human ship's other ports opening. More dark circles appeared along its charcoal-colored hull. He made a decision. It was not heroic, but it was logical. Clarifying Blade, do not engage. He chimed over the secure channel. Power down all weapons. Follow my lead. He then opened a channel to the human ship. This is Sub-Archon Veyrel of the Cathali hegemony. We cease hostile action. The words tasted strange. Commander Park Soo-min listened. She looked at Lee Jun. The captain gave a small nod. Acknowledge. Order them to shut down primary systems and prepare for a security scan. Any movement will be seen as a threat. Park relayed the message. On the screen, the glow from the hegemony ship's engines faded to a dull ember. They were complying. For now, Captain, Chief Kwan's voice came from engineering. The heart is at 40% and stable. All secondary systems are green. The old girl is thirsty, but she's remembering how to drink. Good, Lee Jun said. He finally turned from the screen to look at his bridge crew. Our situation has changed. The fleet is gone. We are alone. Our purpose is no longer to hide. It is to remind them that humanity is not finished. He walked to the center of the bridge. Commander Park, pull all data from the external sensors for the last 72 hours. I want to see the battle that happened out there. Choi Ji-woo, plot us a course away from this gas giant. A slow burn. I want space around us. Kim Tae-shik, keep our new friends covered, but watch the long-range scanners. The main fleet will have noticed. The crew moved with a quiet efficiency. They had trained for this for years, drilling in the dark, waiting for a day they hoped would never come. There was no panic, only focus. Park Soo-min brought the sensor logs onto a side screen. They watched the final moments of the UTC Valiant. They watched the hegemony fleet move with their cruel, beautiful precision. Lee Jun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. He saw the patterns. The enemy was methodical, arrogant. They fought like they were following a script. Analysis? He asked Park. They are masters of a single style, she said, her eyes scanning the data. Their formations are rigid, perfect for countering the technology they just defeated. They expect certain reactions. They do not seem adaptable. Lee Jun nodded. He had seen the same thing. The hegemony had mastered the war they expected to fight. They had not met a ship like the Gurianbi. A ship from a different time, with a different idea of war. The main hegemony fleet was now moving. Archon Kaivar had seen the loss of the Swift verdict. He had heard the human message. His calm was shattered. A surviving human warship of unknown capability was an unacceptable variable. It was a flaw in the perfect ritual of the great culling. It had to be erased. He regrouped his entire armada, over 50 ships, and turned them toward the gas giant. The order was simple: surround and annihilate the human vessel. Doctrine demanded overwhelming force to correct an anomaly. On the Guriambi, long-range scanners painted a worrying picture. Dozens of contacts were converging on their position. "They're coming, Captain," Choi Ji-woo reported. "Estimate 48 minutes until the lead elements are in range." Lee Jun returned to his command chair. He sat down slowly, as if settling into a familiar burden. "Time to wake the rest of her up, Chief. Take the heart to 80%. Bring all armor systems to full. I want the wall around us." The deep thrumming of the ship increased. The lights on the bridge brightened. More status panels flickered to life. Across the massive hull, final layers of false rock were jettisoned. The Guriambi now showed its true form, a blocky, angular fortress of black and gray metal. It was not streamlined for beauty. It was shaped to present a thick face to the enemy, to absorb punishment. "Helm, take us to these coordinates," Lee Jun said, sending a point to Choi Ji-woo's screen. It was a position with open space on all sides. "We will not be cornered. Weapons, prioritize targets. Their command ships first, then any vessel with heavy energy signatures. Use a mix. Let's see what their shields can handle." The Guriambi began to move. Its engines, large and efficient, pushed the colossal mass forward. It was not fast, but it moved with a sense of inevitable momentum, like a glacier. Archon Kavar's fleet arrived. They spread out in a wide, elegant net, their formation designed to trap and focus fire. Kavar himself was on the unblinking eye, a majestic command cruiser. He saw the human ship on his screen. It was ugly. It offended his sense of order. It was a brute force object in a universe of precision. He did not hail them. There was nothing more to say. He gave the order. "All vessels, open fire. Purge this anomaly." The space between the fleets lit up. Dozens of brilliant green plasma beams shot across the void. Converging on the Guriambi, the human ship's shields flared a brilliant, opaque white. They were not the shimmering bubbles of hegemony ships. They were layered, hard light barriers designed to take immense physical and thermal stress. They glowed and rippled under the assault, but they held. Inside the Guriambi, the deck vibrated. A low groan echoed through the hull as the shields dissipated the incredible energy. "Shields at 91%, Park Soo-min reported calmly. "Distributed across all facings. They are focusing fire on our forward section." "Return fire," Lee Jun said. "Broadside pattern delta." Along the port side of the Guriambi, a dozen ports opened. Some fired heavy tungsten rods again. Others launched volleys of old-fashioned guided missiles, each tipped with a simple but powerful nuclear warhead. Still others unleashed a hail of smaller kinetic shot from rapid-fire COILGUNS. It was a storm of different kinds of violence. The hegemony ships were nimble. They dodged some of the slower missiles. But the kinetic weapons were too fast. A rod struck a cruiser called Eternal Certainty, punching through its shields and its engineering deck, leaving it dead in space. A missile got through to a destroyer, Gleaming Resolve, and its nuclear fireball vaporized the ship's entire forward section. The coil gun shot peppered the shields of others, not breaking them immediately, but draining their power with relentless, hammering blows. Kaivar watched, stunned. This was chaos. This was not how war was waged. The human ship was not trying to outmaneuver or outthink. It was standing its ground and throwing every heavy, brutal object it had at them. It was a brawl, not a duel. He ordered his ships to close in, to use their superior speed, and numbers. The Guriambi welcomed them. As the hegemony ships came closer, They entered the range of its point defense network, cloud of automated guns that filled the space around the human battleship with solid metal. Smaller hegemony fighters, launched to harass, were shredded into confetti. Li Jun watched the tactical screen. His ship was a rock in the center of a silver river. The river broke against it. "Target their command ship," he said. "The big one in the rear. Full salvo from the forward batteries. Let them know we see their leader." The Gorambi's forward array, a cluster of its largest kinetic launchers and missile tubes, glowed with charge. Then it fired. A concentrated storm of death shot toward the unblinking eye. On Kava's ship, alarms screamed. Officers chimed in panic. Shields were raised to maximum. Escort ships moved to intercept. Some of the projectiles were destroyed. Some were blocked. But one last tungsten rod, scarred and glowing from point defense fire, slipped through. It struck the unblinking eye's forward shield. The shield collapsed under the concentrated impact. The rod, mostly spent, still slammed into the command ship's elegant prow, crushing decks and tearing open the hull to the cold vacuum dot. The damage was not fatal, but it was a profound shock. The hegemony's flawless formation began to fray. Ships hesitated. Their doctrine had no answer for this. On the bridge of the Goryambi, Li Jun saw the opening. All ahead, slow. Push through them. We're going to the rally point. He had bought time, and he had sown doubt. The first part of the reminder was delivered. The battlefield was no longer a clean, ritual space. It was a messy cloud of debris, drifting plasma, and the frozen scars of laser fire. The perfect formation of the K-Val hegemony fleet was broken. Ships hung back, their commanders unsure. Others darted in and out of range, firing shots that seemed more nervous than decisive dot in the center of it all. The Goryambi moved forward. It was not a fast move. It was a steady, relentless push. Its charcoal-colored hull was now scarred with molten streaks and blackened pits from plasma impacts, but its shape was still solid, unbroken. Like an old battleship from Earth's oceans, it simply absorbed punishment and kept going. Inside, the crew worked in focused silence. The only sounds were the low hum of the ship, the beeping of consoles, and the calm voices of officers. Shields at 67%, Commander Park Soo-min reported. Reactor holding steady at 85. Minor hull breaches on decks 5 and 9 sealed off. Captain Li Jun watched the main screen. The enemy command ship, the unblinking eye, was pulling back behind a wall of cruisers. It was wounded, not dead. He could see the hesitation in the enemy's movements. They were like hunters who had cornered a bear, only to realize their spears were too short. "They are re-evaluating," Park said, looking at the tactical patterns. "They are confused," Li Jun corrected quietly. "They have a book on how to fight a war. We are not in that book." On the unblinking eye, Archon Kaivar was indeed confused. The smooth gray skin of his face was tight with a new, unpleasant emotion: frustration. The human ship defied analysis. Its weapons were primitive, its technology seemingly old. Yet it worked with a brutal, unstoppable logic. Its strength was not finesse, but mass and power. It was a lesson in a different kind of physics. Analyze their attack patterns. Kavar demanded, his chime-like voice sharp. "Archon, there are no patterns." His tactical officer replied, the notes of his voice trembling. "They use kinetic projectiles, explosive missiles, and area denial flak. They attack engines, shields, and weapons randomly. It is inefficient. But it is hard to predict. Inefficient." That was the word that stuck in Kavar's mind. Human warfare, as he had studied it, sought efficiency. This was different. This was about guaranteed destruction. If one type of weapon didn't work, they simply used another, heavier one. It was a clumsy, terrifying way to fight. He made a decision. He would apply the core principle of his mastery. Overwhelming force against a single point. Order the Sundering Fist and the Celestial Hammer to flank the human vessel. All other ships, focus your fire on its forward shield arc. We will overload their systems. They cannot withstand concentrated fire from 30 directions. The hegemony fleet, responding to the familiar command, began to reform. 2 heavy battle cruisers moved wide to either side of the Guriambi. The rest of the armada turned their bows toward the human ship, weapons glowing once more. On the bridge of the Guriambi, Kim Tae-shik saw the movement. "Captain, they're adapting. Trying a pincer move with their heavies. The rest are lining up for a combined strike on our front." Lee Jun leaned forward. This was a predictable move. It was what he would do if he believed in shield mechanics and focused energy. He did not. "Helm, all stop. Rotate us 90 degrees, starboard side to the main group. Weapons, listen carefully. Target the lead ship of the main group with a full salvo from our starboard kinetic batteries. Then, immediately switch all power to port side point defense and close-in missiles. The 2 flankers are the real threat. We will let them come." "Aye, Captain," Choi Gi-woo said, her hands moving. The massive ship's forward thrust ceased. It began to turn sideways, presenting its long, armored flank to the bulk of the enemy. To the hegemony, it looked like a mistake. They were being offered a larger target. Fire. Archon Kavar commanded. A storm of green plasma converged on the Gurumbi's starboard side. The shields there flared a blinding, painful white. The ship shuddered. At the same moment, the Gurumbi's starboard weapons fired back. Not at the whole fleet, but at one ship at the front, a cruiser named Eternal Dawn. A dozen tungsten rods and a cluster of missiles shot out. The focused assault overwhelmed the cruiser's shields in seconds. The rods tore into its hull, and a missile found its reactor. The Eternal Dawn vanished in a silent, expanding sphere of gas and fire, but the maneuver had a cost. Starboard shields failing. Park called out. Down to 19%. "Now, port side. Engage the flankers." Lee Jun ordered. The 2 heavy battle cruisers, Sundering Fist and Celestial Hammer, had come in close, thinking the human ship was distracted. They powered up their main weapons, aiming for the Gurumbi's now exposed starboard flank. They never fired. From the port side of the Guriambi, which was now facing them, a completely different kind of defense erupted. It was not the large, slow fire of the main batteries. It was a swarm. Hundreds of automated point defense turrets, each firing thousands of small, dense metal rounds per minute, filled the space between the Guriambi and the 2 flanking ships. It was like a wall of solid lead. At the same time, dozens of short-range thumper missiles shot out. These were not for deep space. They were simple rockets with high explosive warheads, designed to smash anything that got too close. The Celestial Hammer flew straight into this storm. Its forward shields, tuned for energy weapons, flickered and died under the physical hammering of countless rounds. The thumper missiles then slammed into its naked hull, blowing open its sleek form. It spun away, venting atmosphere and debris. The Sundering Fist tried to pull up to evade. It was too late. A chain of explosions walked along its spine as thumper missiles connected. Its engine array was shattered. It drifted, powerless. The main hegemony fleet's combined volleys stopped. They had watched 2 of their strongest ships be torn apart not by a brilliant counterstrike, but by what looked like an automated, mindless cloud of metal and fire. It was defensive, like a beast shaking off insects. It was horrifying in its simplicity. On the Guriambi, the crew felt the shuddering stop. The starboard shields began a slow recharge, bleeding power from other, less critical systems. "Flanking threat neutralized," Kim Tae-shik said. a note of hard satisfaction in his voice. Li Jun looked at the tactical screen. The enemy fleet was pulling back again, regrouping farther out. The fight was leaving them. They had thrown their best tactical move, and the human ship had responded not with a clever trick, but with a heavier, more brutal application of force. It was a language they were beginning to understand, word by terrible word. They are learning, Park Soo-min observed. Their attacks are losing conviction. Li Jun nodded. He opened a ship-wide channel. His voice echoed through every deck of the Guriambi. This is the captain. You have all done well. The ship has done well. We have shown them that humanity is not just one note to be played and finished. We are a chord, and some of our notes are very old and very deep. Stand ready. This is not over. He closed the channel. He looked at the scarred, beautiful image of his ship on the internal monitor. It was built in fear, to be a last, terrible argument. Today, it had spoken. And for the first time since the Valiant died, the silence on the battlefield belonged to them. The silence in the wake of the Gurumbi's defense was not peaceful. It was the quiet of shock, of a process breaking down. The hegemony fleet hung in space, their elegant formations gone. They were now just a collection of individual ships, their commanders waiting for an order that made sense. The debris of the celestial hammer and the sundering fist drifted among them. A cold reminder. On the bridge of the unblinking eye, Archon Kaivar tried to find his focus. The damage to his ship's prow was a physical pain, a violation of its perfect form. But worse was the damage to his certainty. The human battleship was a paradox. It should not have worked. Its existence broke the rules of the ritual. Yet there it was, scarred but unmoved, a dark rock in a stream of silver. His tactical officer broke the silence. Archon, the human vessel, is not advancing. It is holding position. Its energy signature is stable. They are repairing. What is their demand? Kavar asked, his voice flat. They have made none since their first warning. This was also outside the doctrine. A victor issued terms. A victor explained the new order. This human, this Captain Li Jun, was doing none of that. He was just there. A fact. A wall. Kaivar understood now, in a cold, sinking way. This was not a battle to be won in the way he knew. To defeat this ship, he would have to throw his entire fleet at it, one by one, and let it break them against its hull. He would win, perhaps, but the cost would be the gutting of his command, the loss of the hegemony's proudest fleet. There would be no mastery in such a victory. Only ruin. He felt the eyes of his crew on him. They expected the next move in the ritual. But the ritual was over. Something else had begun. On the Guriambi, the move was one of weary readiness. The initial storm had passed. Captain Li Jun watched the hesitant enemy on the screen. He knew what they were feeling. He had read their doctrine in their movements. They were calculators, and the numbers no longer added up. They are at a decision point. Commander Park said softly, standing beside him. They can leave, or they can die. Li Jun nodded. They need a final reason to leave. A definitive statement. Something that ends the debate. He turned to his weapons officer. Kim Tae-shik. Target the lead command ship, the one that was damaged. Calculate a single shot from the primary spinal cannon. Use a standard penetrator. I do not want it destroyed. I want it. Convinced. A flicker of understanding passed over Kim's face. A warning shot, Captain? But with the main gun? A demonstration, Li Jun corrected. A period at the end of our sentence. The primary spinal cannon was the Gurumbi's oldest and simplest weapon. It ran 3/4 the length of the ship. It was not a laser. It was a massive magnetic accelerator, designed to fire a single dense projectile with enough force to crack a small moon. It took enormous power and minutes to charge. Throughout the ship, non-essential systems dimmed. The deep thrum of the reactor changed pitch, focusing its song into the weapon's capacitors. On the unblinking eye, sensors screamed a new alert. Archon, the human ship is focusing a massive energy buildup along its central axis. The signature is purely magnetic and kinetic. It is targeting us. Kavar looked at the tactical display. The human ship was pointing its blunt nose directly at his heart. There was no subtlety, no attempt to flank or maneuver. It was a direct, brutal challenge. He could order the fleet to fire everything to disrupt the shot. He could order evasive maneuvers. But he saw the numbers. The projectile would be moving at a significant fraction of light speed. At this range, evasion was unlikely, and firing would only invite another of those terrible broadsides. For the first time in his life, Archon Kaivar chose not to fight. "All engines, full reverse," he said, the chime of his voice hollow. "Bring all shield power to the forward arc. Do not return fire." It was an order of pure defense. An admission. On the Guriambi, the charge reached its peak. "Primary cannon ready," Kim Tae-shik reported. Lee Jun looked at the image of the wounded hegemony flagship. Fire. There was no bright flash. The entire Guriambi jerked backwards as if struck by a giant's hammer. From its nose, a streak of superheated metal, too fast for the eye to see, shot across the void. On the unblinking eye, they saw only a flash on the sensors before impact out the tungsten penetrator, glowing white-hot, struck the hegemony ship's already weakened forward shields. The shields shattered like glass. But the shot was not aimed at the core. It was aimed with surgical precision. It struck the very tip of the ship's elegant prow, the part already damaged. The effect was catastrophic, but contained. The entire forward sensor array, the command spires, the proud, sweeping lines of the unblinking eye's bow were simply erased. They were pulverized into atoms and molten slurry. The force of the impact drove the massive ship backwards, sending shockwaves through its entire frame. Lights failed. Systems died. But the reactor, the engines, the main hull, they were untouched. The ship was alive, but it was headless and blind. It was a message written in metal and fire. "I could have killed you. I chose not to." The silence returned, deeper than before. The hegemony fleet watched their leader's ship, its beautiful form now a mangled, smoking stump. No order came from it. It was dead in the water. One by one. Then in groups, the hegemony ships powered down their weapons. Their engine glows cooled. They turned their bows away from the Guriambi and the human core worlds beyond. There was no announcement. No formal surrender. They simply stopped. The fight was gone. On the bridge of the Guriambi, the crew let out a long, collective breath they didn't know they were holding. Choi Ji-woo slumped slightly in her chair. Kim Tae-shik unclenched his jaw. Park Soo-min closed her eyes for a moment. Only Lee Jun seemed unchanged. He watched as the alien fleet began a slow, disordered retreat, some moving to aid the crippled, unblinking eye. He felt no glory. He felt the weight of the long, silent watch, and the heavier weight of being the one who had to fire the gun to end it. "Captain," Park said, her voice thick with emotion she would not show. "The field is ours." Lee Jun nodded slowly. He keyed the internal comms to engineering. "Chief Kwan, you can let the heart rest a little. We're done for now." "Aye, Captain," the old engineer's voice came back, scratchy with pride and fatigue. "She served well." Lee Jun then opened a channel on the old colonial emergency frequency. It was a simple radio wave, loud and clear, meant to travel. "This is Captain Lee Jun of the Battleship Guriambi to any United Terran Colonies vessels or stations. The K-Thel hegemony fleet is in retreat at Epsilon ND. The immediate threat is over. He paused, thinking of the Valiant, of all the ships and crews that were gone. Tell the colonies. Tell them the watchman is awake. And the night is over. He closed the channel. The bridge was quiet again, filled only with the steady, comforting hum of the ship. They had won a battle, not a war, but they had proven something more important. They had proven that humanity's history was not a single book that could be closed by someone else. Some pages were written in stone and steel, and they took longer to read. Li Jun looked at his crew, his friends who had kept the vigil with him. Set a course for the outer beacon. Slow and steady. And get some rest. All of you. You've earned it. As the Guriambi turned, a lonely fortress once more moving through the dark, it left behind a changed star system. The aliens had claimed mastery of war, but they had never met a wall before. And humanity, when pressed, remembered how to build them.